So you'd like to hear how I handled an in-flight electrical fire while operating a Cessna 182 over the White House? Sure. The year was about, I think it was 2009 when this happened. I was a flight instructor. I had recently finished up a gig doing traffic reporting. So I had like 997 hours because I crossed the 1,000-hour threshold mark on this flight. So first we need some background. Ever since 9/11, there has been some sort of defense perimeter around Washington, D.C. It used to be called the ADIZ. Now it is called the SFRA, the Special Flight Rules Area. And this is an area of 3 concentric rings that are designed to make congressmen feel like they did something and that they're safe. So the first ring is 60 miles out, and I can show you on the picture. Take a look at the picture. The first one is 60 miles out, but that didn't exist back in 2009. You only had the 30-mile ring and the inner ring, which ranges from 15 to 17 miles. The 30-mile ring is the SFRA, or the SFRA, Special Flight Rules Area. To operate within the Special Flight Rules Area in a way that's unlike the rest of the country, you must be on a flight plan. Even in other areas where you don't require one, here you need one. And you must maintain two-way communication with air traffic control, and you have to have a specific code being transmitted on your transponder, which is a piece of equipment that air traffic control uses to find out who that airplane is and how high they are. Within the 15 or 17 mile range, that's called the flight restricted zone, the FRZ or freeze. And if you're going to fly within the freeze, that requires coordination. You have to submit paperwork. It has to be approved. You need to speak with the NRCC, I think it's called. It's a military installation, so you can coordinate. To fly within this area, you got to submit your personal information. You get a little background paperwork done, and then you file it. You get a specific code on top of the transponder code. A lot of things. You submit your flight plan. You got to stick to it. So that's the background. Oh yeah, by the way, if you don't do any of this stuff, you will either be intercepted by military aircraft, or if you enter the freeze, you will be. They have these little lasers, not like Star Trek lasers. These are just optical lasers that flash red and green at you, and that's like your last warning that you're doing something really wrong. And if you don't turn around, and I don't know their parameters for how quickly you got to turn around, they can open fire at you, either through air-to-air or ground-to-air means. Yeah, there's some serious ramifications there. So that's the background you must understand before I tell the rest of the story. So up until that point, I flew a variety of different general aviation aircraft, never flown a Cessna 182. And for those who don't know what a Cessna 182 is, it's that airplane off over there. That's what it looks like, Cessna 182. Now, I have flown a Cessna 172 before, and they're very similar, but the 182 flies differently. It's a heavier, more powerful aircraft. Anyway, I'm at the flight school, and the chief pilot comes to me and says, hey, we have a photo flight tomorrow in the FRZ. Think you can handle it? I'm like, sure. Okay, it's on the 182. Let's go training. Well, go no. He gave me 30 minutes of training on the Cessna 182. I did maybe 2 landings in it. And he said, okay, you're good to go. I'm like, great. So I show up the day of. There's a photographer. There's a police officer, law enforcement officer. Why? Because the permits that allow you to fly within the flight restricted zone require there to be an armed law enforcement officer on board your civilian aircraft per the permit. So we got a police officer who sat in the back for a joyride. He joked that he's there just in case I decided to do something nefarious. So he's going to take care of me. I mean, we were joking about it, but that's essentially what he's there for. Anyway, we take off. We're going to do survey work for the photographer's taking pictures for Maryland, Virginia, D.C. for work on the Washington Beltway and the George Washington Parkway, which if you're a local like I am, it's still being done today. They're still working on it. But anyway, we're up there flying along. We're about 3 hours in when this happens. My tick mark over to the 1,000 hours of flight time just happened a half hour prior to the event I'm about to tell you. So flying along, 7,500 feet, we are over the nation's capital. Oh, by the way, within the Special Flight Rules Area, within the flight restricted zone, there is the Holy of Holies. You will not touch this. This is the National Mall where the Capitol building is and the White House. That's called P56, Prohibited Area 56. We had permits to fly in this area. We did not have permission to go over P56. So there I am, a mile away from P56, literally, at 7,500 feet heading westbound, when my avionics stack, and if you don't know what an avionics stack is, here's a picture, that's an avionics stack over there, starts going up in white smoke, billowing white smoke. This woke up the policeman who was snoozing in the back, who starts to freak out. The photographer, who brings his face back in from the window, sees it, starts to freak out. And I start to kick into my training mode. Like, what do you do? It's an electrical fire on a GA airplane. Now, for those pilots among us and flight instructors, you know if you have an electrical fire on board a general aviation aircraft like this one is, the first thing you do is you turn off the master battery switch and you cut electric current to all systems altogether. That way you remove the source of heat from the fire. The problem is, if I did that, I lose the transponder, which is squawking the very special code that's keeping us from being shut down right now. I lose my radios, the way to communicate that I have issues as well. So I can't do that. So now I have to invent a new way to handle this emergency. Of course, now with thousands and thousands of flight hours, it seems less trivial, but at the time, this was a big deal. Also, my first true emergency, so I had that startle factor. So first things first, I declare emergency with air traffic control. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cessna, blah, blah, blah. Electrical fire, standby. Air traffic control calls back. Souls on board, fuel on board, state intentions. I say request to land nearest suitable. They say DCA, which is Reagan National, is a half mile behind you, 7,000 feet below. I say I'll take it. And they say you're cleared direct, you're cleared to DCA airport via direct. Altitude or discretion. So I start the steep spiral down to the deck. Now, as I'm spiraling down to the deck, I start to troubleshoot the issue. I cannot turn the master battery off because I don't know what coordination is happening between air traffic control and the military guys who are watching me very closely. I don't know. So I don't want to turn every single bit of my equipment off. So I start going one by one. I have two radios that can communicate. I put them on the same frequency with air traffic control, so I'm in constant. So I turn one off. The other one is listening. That didn't stop the smoke. Turn it back on. Turn off number 2. That didn't stop the smoke. Turn it back on. And I go down my radio stack, equipment by equipment. The one thing I didn't touch was the transponder. It ended up being the Loran. And the Loran is a defunct navigation equipment that was on the aircraft. I don't know why. I didn't even know it was there because I only had 30 minutes of training on the plane. But it was one overheating. Switched it off. The smoke stopped billowing. And I continued down to the deck. And I did not ventilate the cabin because I didn't want to introduce fresh oxygen into it. So it was kind of cloudy, but continued down to land. In this steep spiral, I'm seeing airliners being vectored around me because they were on the river visual landing 19. There was a JetBlue 190. If you're the pilots of that, I'm sorry. Thank you. Doing this go around with the vector, sharp turn, and I see you. And then I'm cleared to land any runway. At the time when they cleared me to land any runway, I was set up for a downwind, very high downwind to runway 15. I figured I'll take it. It'll keep me away from P-56. And a really high, somebody says on the radio, I think it was a pilot, they say, slip it in. So I do a forward slip down to landing. It's the only landing that I've ever had recorded externally of mine because security camera footage caught it and it was ugly. It was bounce, 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 but I got it on the ground. Cleared the runway. I was met by 2 fire trucks, 2 ambulances. I secured the aircraft, evacuated the passengers, made sure, worked with the fire marshals, and they escorted us to the FBO, that's where the private planes go on the field. Once I was inside the FBO and I had a moment to breathe, I was met by TSA, FAA, NTSB. NTSB called me the day later, and local police who all wanted to question me, answered their questions. And then the policeman who was with us spoke with some of his police buddies at the airport, and we got a lovely ride back to our local airport in the back of a police car. So that's the story of my first ever emergency in an aircraft. I got follow-up calls from the FAA and the NTSB. It was electrical failure of the Loran, is what they came up with. And, you never know how you're going to react till it happens to you. But first things first, fly the plane, okay? That's the first thing you want to do. The next thing you want to do, if you have a system that's blaring at you, silence any warnings you may have, confirm the emergency, and then begin to troubleshoot it. If you're in a GA airplane, fly the plane first. Just continue with the aviate, navigate, communicate, right? Aviate, navigate, communicate, troubleshoot. Fly the plane, make sure you're going where you need to go, communicate the emergency, troubleshoot the emergency. Now, in hindsight, air traffic control told me that I was cleared through P-56. They never verbally said it, but they said that even in the emergency situation, I was cleared through that most holy of prohibited zones because I declared emergency. Never hesitate to declare emergency. You don't know what that unlocks for you and how that helps you. Though I'm sure I was under a very, very watchful eye by somebody with a very powerful trigger as well. But that's my story. If you got more questions, post in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you on board.